I'm so thrilled to be here, and I've been very honored to be invited to speak here. Now, I wanted to quiz you all, since this is something that has been puzzling me. I just remembered what LCEEQ stands for, and I want each one of you to tell me, I'm going to select someone randomly to tell me what do those letters stand for. Okay, no, I'm joking. I just wanted to make sure everyone was paying attention. There's nothing to get people to sit up in their seats like striking fear into their heart. Works very effectively. So as you're no doubt enjoying your ice cream, I was kind of shoving spoonfuls in my mouth before I came up here, just so that I could get the most out of it. As you're enjoying your ice cream, I hope that you can all also show that wonderful 21st century quality of multitasking and manage to pay attention as well. But it is good ice cream, so I won't hold it too much against you. So firstly, I want you to take a look at this newspaper clipping. It says, "Students teach teachers." Teachers at Paul J. Sorkin Junior High School in Ufielda, Iowa were surprised early this Monday by an educational change of pace instigated by the Ufielda County school system. Instead of students filing into classes to hear this teacher's lecture at the head of the class, teachers found themselves being herded into classrooms where young people lectured and assigned homework to the dumbfounded grown-ups. Students infiltrated the PA system, coached the day's sports, and managed all extracurricular activities. "It was a surreal experience," said one teacher when asked to describe her day. I know that this sounds incredibly strange, but students teaching teachers, however, may not be such an isolated occurrence. Here's a close-to-home example.
The link to share, announce an attachment, and even publish it as a webpage. Answer your question. It's like talking to ninth graders, only who know more than me.
So in this case, my students are teachers. In both of the examples that you just saw, I was on video conference talking to groups of teachers in each case. Whether about technology or about learning from students or whatever the topic was, I have done a lot of these speeches over video conferencing to teachers as well as students. At this conference, the idea of the student as teacher seems to be catching on. I'm not sure how many of you were reading carefully through the program or who maybe attended the presentation, The Student as Teacher Comprehension, Instruction, and Board Games by John LeBlanc, which I actually went to and it was very fun. So this idea of students having something to teach teachers is definitely becoming more popular. But some of you, and you know who you are, might be thinking along the lines of, well, it's really not good. It's messing with the natural order of the universe. It's going to have some disastrous effects. But my way of thinking is this. Just as it's good to hear two sides of the issue, your parents might have always told you, step into someone else's shoes, etc., then it's a good idea to be able to see from both sides of the classroom. I don't think we can truly understand learning and teaching until we step into someone else's shoes. These are appropriately selected to be. They're one of the most popular brands among students as far as I know in my areas. The insights we can learn from, when you learn from your students, when you ask your students, what is your perspective on your education experience, and try to be a student and understand your own learning process, the insights that you take from that will help you form the education systems of the future. We've heard today quite a lot about how much catching up education has to do when it comes to technology. And I think it's not just education either. All of you might have had your kids help you with technology. You might have seen your kids talking about, I did this on my iPhone, I did this on the computer, etc. And I know that society often belittles the whole over 40 age group when it comes to technology and technology use. Maybe 30 over. When someone, 25 over, I'm not really sure about when it starts. This is from an anonymous source. She's not here today, but I do know her. And she said, "Old people on Facebook? That's just wrong," was one of her more memorable quotes. And this, in context, this was right after we'd heard on the radio that I think it was Queen Elizabeth II was going to get on Facebook or something, and that's why she said that. And I don't think she meant it seriously, but it really reflected some of the thought about really your use of all these new tools. And I think that there's some reason behind all this doubt and skepticism when it comes to, oh, my parents can't use their iPhone, etc. Maybe it's less about ability. It's not so much that you guys can't use it or that you don't know how to use different things. It's just we've had more time, we've grown up in a world where we have all these tools readily available to us, if you just ask yourself, when you were growing up, did you know how to blog, tweet, social network online? Unless some of you in the audience are very young, the answer is probably no. With new technologies like cell phones, iPods, and the internet, students like me live in a world that is increasingly technology-driven. We've heard a lot about this already today. Could you have predicted 20 or 30 years ago that the word tweet would become common usage and that friend would become a verb? Put on your student hat and imagine that you're someone my age. Already in 13 years, I've seen quite a few things. I've seen the switch from VCRs and videotapes to TiVos and DVDs. My generation has grown up with all these things like cell phones, internet, email, calculators. And during the protests recently in Iran and also in Egypt, you saw how these protests, they were organized on Facebook, they were organized by email, instant message, and even during the protests in Iran, then a lot of the news sources were getting their information from Twitter and Facebook and email, the eyewitness reports of the 21st century. I know that Ian Dukes has already said quite a bit of this, so I'm going to spare you. I actually had some very nice statistics about how many careers people my age would have growing up, but you kind of stole my my statistics there. If there's one thing that makes a really shocking presentation, it's statistics, because those always come in handy whenever you need them. But instead, I'm going to just tell you a little bit from my own experience. When I actually took a couple classes last semester at my local school, in addition to the ones I already take online. And even though we are in the 21st century, and you might think, well, we have all this amazing technology, etc., my educational experience going to regular school was, I'm sitting down in a chair, I'm listening to the teacher, and that's class. And you might wonder, what's so wrong with this? Why can't we still pave the same path as we did 100 years ago? I mean, some of our greatest thinkers came out of that education system. But I would argue that because we're preparing students for this really new world in an age of global connections, a lot of people talk about, well, there's so many people who will be competing, and I think it's very true. Canadian students aren't just going to be competing with other Canadian students, and American students aren't just going to be competing with other American students. It's going to be China and Singapore and Russia and England and all these other countries. And if any of you listened to Barack Obama's State of the Union, it probably won't be very relevant to you guys, but I know I was tuning in, and you wouldn't believe how many times China was brought up, all these other countries were brought up as competition. And in this age of global connections, then our students like me, the students that I see every day, they're very diverse in how they learn as well as ethnicity. So the 21st century, as you all know by now, has brought so many innovations when it comes to technology, transportation, how we get our information. And when it comes to learning and teaching, I truly believe that it's time to catch up to us and the 21st century. Being on both sides of the classroom means using the tools that matter to us and using approaches that work. We know that we can create this innovative classroom with the help of technology, but when it comes to technology, you might ask, well, who's going to help me? And even I ask that sometimes, setting up this presentation, going to conferences, there's always tech support, there's always, this needs to be set up, these speakers have to be a certain way. And if you imagine a world without assistance when it comes to technology, it might be kind of utter chaos. So technology is kind of daunting sometimes. But I would put this forth. Raise your hand if you've ever asked a kid to help you with a piece of technology you weren't sure about. I see a lot of raised hands. There's your answer. There's our new tech support. Not so much to take away the jobs of already competent adults in that area, but just as a way of showing that you're learning from kids. You're learning a lot from kids. As I said in my introduction, we've had technology since the day of our birth, and it's a commonly accepted reality that we can be more skilled with certain tools. It might make some people uncomfortable or scared when you say, there's a 10-year-old that knows more about this than me. What's up with that? But I think that if you find yourself in this position, it's really not so bad as long as you're open-minded about catching up. As a case in point of this kind of attitude, I have a personal story about this. This is my dad, John Speedhawk. He's not here, but he's been interested in Facebook for some time now. He never found the time to set up an account, but more recently, he decided to, last October actually, he decided to go ahead and join the social network. And what's so interesting about my dad being on Facebook is that usually it's my sister and I who are asking him all the questions. What's the deal with ionic and covalent bonds again? How exactly do I solve this inequality? You get that, but now it's him who's asking me, how do I post on someone's wall? How do I write a message on Facebook? Not make that simple, but things like that. And it's nice for once to be able to teach my dad something. My dad is a very quick learner when it comes to Facebook, so I also set up a blog for him, and he's going to do that. And also, as far as the list of things of technology that my dad can now check off, he also is addicted to the cell phone game app Angry Birds. I'm not sure if that's positive or negative, but I still count it as an accomplishment. My dad being online, with the possible exception of Angry Birds, it actually equals more in-person conversation because he's asking us questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? I'd like to set up this. How do I do it? What's the pluses and minuses of being on Twitter, etc. And so all of that has really allowed me to see this is kids teaching their parents. And when I was little, I always thought my parents, they know everything. You know, if I had a question, if I didn't know a word, I would go to my dad, I would go to my mom and be like, hey mom and dad, what's the meaning of this? What's the meaning of that? So now being able to teach them something is really, it makes me feel quite accomplished. And I highly encourage you to do the same with your kids and with your students, whether at home or at school. Encourage them to find what they can teach you, not just what you can teach them. But to put my teacher hat back on for a second, or at least some teachers hats, when you walk down the street and you find a teacher and you ask them, well, what do you think of social networking? What do you think of all its applications in education? A first response might be something like, well, what does LOLing and OMGing and taking Are You a Cookie quizzes, what does all that have to really do with education? How is that going to help my students? We send one-line emails with more emoticons than words. What is the purpose of that? How is that supposed to be helpful? And one thing I do indeed worry about is that while social networking and all, it allows us to reach out on a wider scale, we sometimes aren't going as deep. We might not be, when we used to write out these page-long letters, then we might put more care and thought into what we wrote. And now I'm not sure if we have as much pressure to do that. So that's what some people might worry about. All this shallow communication we have today might make you skeptical of social networking and all this and its ability to help education. Maybe you've even seen evidence to the contrary. Raise your hand if you've had your sons, daughters, students, whatever, get distracted by cell phones or social networking or whatever while in class. Or, yeah, that's really a pointless question because a lot of hands will be raised. My own sister, she's supposed to be doing her homework, she's chatting with someone. So you might think this is negative, not positive. But I would argue that just as I've seen students who've been distracted, who aren't on task because they're chatting with a friend or something, I've also seen kids who use the internet every day to post meaningful work and to help others. We often hear about adults searching for the meaning of life and a higher purpose, but many neglect the fact that kids want purpose, meaning, impact in their lives, and particularly in education as well. I ran a conference in September called TEDx Redmond. TEDx events are independently organized TED events. And TEDx Redmond was unique in that it was organized entirely by kids under the age of 18. We actually sent the adults out of the room, we sent them to the simulcast room. All the attendees were under 18, all the speakers also. It was a kid's eye view on everything from education to the environment. We heard from one speaker, Zoe Sprankle, about the issue of impact, effect, and purpose, particularly in class. So I want you to take a listen here. Could we have sound? Is the sound plugged in? Maybe if you pause the video, it might. Sorry, I'm not controlling the computer. I'm not quite sure what's wrong. That's odd. Here, let me. The introduction isn't like crucial, but it's just kind of crucial that we hear the speech part. Okay, let me. Oh. And she said, for all my years, I've been going to learn in a boring little classroom. And I know this doesn't sound at all positive, but she went on to say that her classroom, it was just 4 walls, and what she did in there, it didn't have an impact, it didn't have an effect, it didn't have a purpose. And she said that everyone in the room, probably what they wanted to do was to have footprints on the world, to make an impact and have an effect and a purpose. But what she had been learning in her classroom and what she'd been doing in her classroom didn't allow her to do that. And that was something that I found really very close to home, because I've been speaking at a lot of events and I've met a lot of students who would really like to do more, who would like to go out and have an impact, but oftentimes what they're doing in school, it's restricted and it doesn't allow them to go out and actually see change. And one of the most common complaints, and you probably have heard this quite often from students, is that school is boring. And I think that a lot of this is because, a lot of the reason behind this is because students might not see the relevance. They might not understand why are we learning this and what is the impact we're going to have. And it's a natural behavior to really want to know why and to want to know what's going to happen. And the other video that I was going to show. Okay, video that I am going to show. That video is because that's an example of what students going out, making change, having an impact looks like. And that's not happening enough. We need to have more of where students understand that they can make a difference. It's not restricted to just adults. And there are examples of this kind of service learning, project-based learning happening in the US and Canada as well. I read this article on Edutopia where a science teacher, Brian Kiva, asked a group of 8th graders at his school to pick a problem, any problem from their community, and solve it. And so they, and I'm reading off of the article here, they picked buffalo grass, the fast-growing, flame-resistant menace, which is cheaply imported by some states as inexpensive erosion control and cattle feed. But like something out of a bee horror film, it devours the natural habitat, stealing water and sucking the nutrients from the ecosystem. Once the students discovered the plague-like weed, they weren't sure how to spread the word of its horrors. One student declared that they needed to get the word out, since knowledge is power. So they decided to create a Facebook page devoted to the threat and post a rap song on YouTube all about buffalo grass. I'll just show a little bit of this one. Millions of plants, maybe.
This is buffalo grass. And as you can see, there are seeds on
No! My name is the Weed Killer, call me anytime. You can talk to me as long as it rhymes.
So, they're rapping about buffalo grass. The quality varies throughout the video, and but they did a great job on really raising awareness about this issue. And it's an issue that you probably wouldn't find just looking for. And so I'm impressed that they chose this one that I didn't really know much about and raised awareness about it. And this project was all about student choice, the scientific method, and getting the word out to different states, going from Edutopia, courtesy of little 21st century know-how. In doing, he created a learning community and nurtured what many teachers scratch their heads to achieve, students who love the learning process. Using the social networking tools of our age, this Tucson teacher and a small group of students began to educate politicians, farmers, and Facebook fans like me. Using 21st century tools, they become advocates for their own local community. One of the things that I like best about this example of the buffalo grass project is that it really made this issue and the learning relevant to kids. It wasn't their science teacher saying, today I'm going to talk about buffalo grass, this is buffalo grass, this is what you do, because a lot of kids are probably tuning out to that kind of thing. It's buffalo grass, okay, great, the teacher's giving me a lecture about this weird stuff. But by taking ownership of their learning, these students were able to really investigate it and take a personal interest in it. So what can you do? Ask yourself, what are problems in my community? What are problems that face my area? And how can my students be a part of the solution? Many focus on students graduating from high school and going to college as the start of the solution. But I believe that students can begin making a difference, solving problems within their communities far earlier. In other words, make a difference no matter how young. A classroom where students have the opportunities to solve real-life problems and engage in service learning is an innovative classroom. It isn't one where it's all about things which students are going to be like, this isn't relevant to me, I don't like learning this, where students really have the chance to go out and discover problems and solve them, because that's not just learning, that's also life. I believe that an innovative classroom isn't just one where the world comes to us, it's one where we can help the world. One where we have voice in the education decisions that will affect our future primarily, and an innovative classroom is a connected one where students can connect in more ways than one, maybe not just face-to-face, but also online. It's one where we can use online technology like blogging or rapping on YouTube to create meaningful work. I think most people would agree with me when I say that the internet has changed a lot of how we look at knowledge. When I said this, though, my dad was like, it wasn't just the internet, it was books first. He's very defensive about books. And I do agree with him in this point, because indeed books did democratize knowledge. Before it would be that you had your monks copying out books by hand, and it was very slow and it was very decorative and it was for mostly very rich people. So the web is the printing press of the modern age in many ways. And just as the printing press made the value of books, which had to be copied by hand, more plentiful and cheap, then the internet is making information even more so. It's becoming more distributed. And if the internet is the printing press of our times, then I feel like too many students and too many teachers are stuck as those monks copying out books by hand. Why should learning be restricted to an hour or 45 minutes of class time per subject? By improving student access to technology at home and at school, you're able to give them an environment of learning, to surround them in learning. I've been talking quite a bit about technology, but some of the things which make good classrooms, as you know, are things which aren't new or technological at all. They have to do with tried and true methods of teaching that have been around as long as the profession. Think back to the best teachers you had. What made them so effective? Raise your hand if you felt that your best teachers made a personal connection with you, that they knew you, that they cared about your learning. I'm seeing pretty much unanimously raised hands. It's this personal connection that we have to strive for when it comes to teaching, because yes, teaching is about connecting places and facts and ideas, but it's also about connecting people. You have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of my role as an educator? Maybe you administrate projects, lead change, manage budgets, but one of the most important things you do is to form those personal connections with your students. If you think back to your best teachers, I'm guessing they weren't the ones who read line by line out of the textbook and ran the class like automated robots. They were the ones who took personal interest in your learning, who asked you how you were doing, who really seemed to be affected when you weren't doing well or when you didn't seem to be interested. Personal relationships affect how well we learn even before we get to be school age. I was at a conference called TEDx Rainier, and I saw a professor of speech and hearing sciences from the University of Washington, Patricia Kuhl, speak, and she'd done all these studies with babies and how they learned language. And so one of the things they found were that at birth, babies are citizens of the world. That is, they respond to syllables from all kinds of different languages, whether from Asia or Europe. But after constant exposure to one language, then they would become really nationalized. They would lose that ability. But when that was counteracted, when they were exposed to the sounds of another language that might be completely foreign, so let's say babies from the US who were exposed to Mandarin, which was actually the case in this study, then they maintained that ability. So they had actually people who spoke Mandarin come to the house of a baby and speak to them on a regular basis. And the babies kept recognition. But hearing the previously recorded Mandarin on TV or from audio didn't have an effect. And this all goes to show the importance of personal connections, of the person there. I'd like to sincerely congratulate all of you on your hard work, whether you're teachers, administrators, education consultants, whatever your role may be. I know that you've really worked hard and that you have the interests of students like me and all of your students out there really at heart. And I'd like to tell you, actually, firstly, I want you to turn to the person next to you and debate about the newspaper clipping I showed you earlier. Do you think that that is an actual newspaper clipping cut out of the Ufield Herald, or do you think that that's something that somehow I made up?
Someone made it for students to teach.
Okay, so I guess you made it
Going to hell in a handbasket.
It's pretty clever. I was sure I believed in it first.
Me too. Me too. I just can't believe when
things have plummeted to that point that students teach teachers.
Okay.
What's
I
wrong
think that
with Canada?
that should be enough time. You know, I don't have a Himalayan bowl to strike here, but I'm going to just use my voice. Raise your hands if you think it was a genuine newspaper article. I see some raised hands. Okay. Raise your hand if you think it was manufactured. Wow, it's a pretty equal divide. Okay, well, I've got to raise my hand for the second one. I actually made it up. There's an online newspaper clipping service, which is actually really handy. I'm not using it like to do crimes or anything. I just couldn't figure out what you were laughing at. So basically what I did was I just wrote up a story that was kind of shocking about these students herding the teachers into the classroom and assigning them homework, which I thought, I didn't realize so many of you would fall for it. Although that newspaper clipping may be fake, I hope that the message you'll walk away with is one that's very true. That you may not be the only teachers in the room, that the students who you speak to, you can often learn quite a bit from them. And raise your hand if you've, actually I went to poll you guys here, raise your hand if you've ever learned something other than how to work a piece of technology from a student. I'm seeing even more hands than for technology. And this is so true because when I video conference with students, when I see their dedication, when I see them talking about different things, I've learned a lot from the students whom I speak to, and I've learned a lot even from those who are younger than me. And when you think about it, the best relationships are reciprocal. Oops. What was the last good friendship you had with someone who never wanted to know what you thought, never asked you a question, or wanted to know how your day was? In business or friendship, government or education, listening to others works. It's easier to listen to someone and to respect someone when they listen to and respect you. When I feel respected, I'm more likely to return that feeling. What is it exactly that you can learn from your students? I'm sure you all have different, unique answers, but I've learned that from many younger students. Maybe it's that almost naive belief in possibility, positive thinking versus negative, or the creativity that you see in a 4-year-old's crayon drawings. It's obvious that just as kids can learn a lot from adults, and what I'm trying to say here is not that, no, adults shouldn't teach kids. I think that I can learn a lot from those of you who are older than I am. But our schools often do not create opportunities for young people to teach their teachers. At the Kids Conference I organized, TEDx Redmond, we heard speakers come and talk about a variety of different issues, and one where we heard a lot of voice from was in the area of education. There were speakers who were talking about budget cuts, cafeteria lunches, all these things which directly impacted them, and in every case there were decisions that had been made without their input. That's a shame, and that's something that we need to fix. At my house, you have a book of brain teasers, and one of them tells the story of a boy who goes to the hospital, and he sees a doctor, and the doctor says, "This is my son," but his dad isn't at the hospital. So how is it possible for the doctor to be there? Well, as some of you may know, the doctor is his mother. And the reason that that's a brain teaser in the book is because of cultural perceptions of doctors being men. What is the average age of the person you think of when you hear the word teacher? Probably an adult. I want you to change that image. Why does the teacher always have to be an adult? Why couldn't it be someone my age or younger? You can think of a comparable riddle on your own. I've been virtually saying put on your, switching hats, saying put on your student hat, put on your teacher hat, but really you shouldn't have a student hat or a teacher hat because everyone has something to learn and everyone has something to teach. Teaching and learning is a two-way street, but unlike on the real street, there's no driver's age requirement. To all of you in the audience, I commend you for your hard work and dedication in teaching the next generation, no, the present generation of leaders. I encourage each one of you, whether you're a teacher, a parent, a child and education consultant, someone here at this conference, whatever you do, I hope that you will all think about what you can learn from the other. I've been here at this conference for a few days, going to sessions, well, it's been over 2 days, but I've been going to sessions, and I really, whenever I go to conferences, I always try to embrace what can I learn from the other speakers. Just because I'm a keynote speaker and just because I'm going to be speaking to this audience doesn't mean that I can't learn from them and doesn't mean that I can't walk into sessions and view them. And that's something that I really enjoy doing. And at the same time, going to these conferences, it's allowed me to learn so much and look at my own learning process. And that's really helped me because I firmly believe, as many of you probably do, that it's only when we know how to learn that we truly know how to teach. Thank you. Oh, and also I'll be signing your books. If you want me to sign your books, then I will be able to do that.